Repetition of straight lines in a gradation of angles can produce shapes and the illusion of overlapping forms with curves. The basic setup rules for making line shapes are this. There must be two straight axes or axes. The two axes must have a common endpoint. Each axis must be divided into the same number of segments. The segments on an axis should be the same size. These are the same size, and these are the same size. The axes do not have to be the same length, and axes can join at any angle except 180 degrees, which would be a straight line. To construct the shape, you first locate the common endpoint between the two axes, and you draw a line from the furthest segment from that common point to the closest segment from that common endpoint. Then you repeat it, only eliminating the segments you've already used. Thus you draw from this segment to that segment, and then repeating it again until all the segments have lines drawn to them and filling in the shape. The greater the number of segments on an axis, the denser the shape and the more defined the curve produced. This also can create a sense of perspective or distance. As I stated, axes don't have to be the same length, but they do have to have the same number of segments. Note that the segments on one axis have to be a different size due to the different length of the axis. The axes don't have to meet at a right angle. They can have different kinds of angles, which gives you a variety of shapes. Also, the angles can be positioned differently on your page. Compounding axes can give you compounded shapes. Axes can be used for one shape and then another. For instance, here you have it look like two axes, but they could be three. In other words, you could forget this one was here and make a shape along here. Then you could forget this one is here and make a shape along here. And you would end up with something that looked like this. Taking it a step further, you put four axes together and you get even more complex a shape and even some kind of illusion of depth. By combining more axes, you get even more hybrid shapes, and you can even get overlapping, which gives you shapes within shapes. If the axes make a closed form, they tend to make a picture frame, and then when carried on, make a complex picture frame with overlapping. To add more complexity to your composition using line shapes, you can have apparent overlapping. That is where one shape appears to be in front of and block out another shape, when actually they're on a flat surface and really don't. This is done by having sets of axes, such as these two, and you complete your line shape like this on top of the axis that you're saying is in the back. It's still there. It would still have little segment marks. It's good to do this very light so that you don't have to try and erase later. Then, once you start making the second line shape, you draw from one side of the axes to the other, but you stop whenever you hit the shape that's already done and continue on the other side. Or you draw and then just stop altogether, even though you're heading for a point on an axis that is hidden by the first shape. This allows you not only to have more complex compositions, but also to have them so that they appear like certain parts are in front of others, and you get the illusion of depth. Now I'll go through this so you can see how it's actually done. Again, 2 axes, common endpoint. Start off my first one. I go from the closest to the furthest. Now I have these numbered, and when you practice, numbers help. But as you get good at this, you can drop off the numbers, and actually the smaller the marks, the better your design looks because it doesn't distract from the lines. Now let me do one where the axes are different lengths. This one's longer than this one. They have the same number of segments, but as I said, these are closer together and these are further apart, so that you can still have the same number of segments. Same rules apply. Common corner going from the furthest from the common corner to the closest from the common corner. Now I'll do one where the axes don't meet at a right angle. But again, there are 12 segments here and 12 segments here. Common corner, furthest to the nearest. Move along to the next one, number 2, which has become by elimination the furthest to the nearest. Let me demonstrate apparent overlapping. Now this axis will be the one that's in front, so I can put it a little darker to begin with. The one that's in back, I won't even really want to have showing until I've got the first one done. Now I've made the little mark segments here very small and very light, because you don't want them to show up as part of your design. Two axes, common corner, the furthest segment to the closest. Rotate to the next furthest, to the next closest. And just continue the operation, because this is the one that's going to be in front. All lines will show. All right, there's the first one. Now for the second one. First I'll put in the axes. Notice when I put in the second one, I'm not going to draw it through the first object dark. I will, when I put my segments in, have the little tiny light dots back there to help guide me. And now I've put the segments in. They go along each axis. And in here, they're just little tiny dots, because I need to aim towards them, but I'm not going to draw it to them. And here's how that works. Again, two axes, common corner. I'm going to draw from the nearest to the farthest, or farthest to the nearest. And because I'm in the open space, I'm going to draw the whole way from one segment mark to the next. This segment marks right next to that. Now here's where we start building the illusion. The next segment mark is right here inside the one I've already drawn. So I'll line up with it and I'll draw towards it, but I stop when I hit the first object. Same thing with the next one. I'll draw towards it, but I'll stop as soon as I hit it. The next one, same thing. Draw towards it, and I stop. Next one, draw towards it, and stop. Now the next segment is outside. So I draw, stop at the object, and come out the other side. Go to the next segment, draw, stop, continue on the other side. You just have to be careful that you don't get in a hurry and draw through that first object. It's tempting to get going on this and just keep making the lines, but precision, keeping everything orderly, and a nice sharp pencil make a big difference in how this will look. And there you have them. One appears to be in front of the other because it hides part of the one that is supposedly behind it. Using the basic techniques, interesting compositions can be produced.